of such attitudes also. Well, you have been touching the subject of President Reagan's leadership before, but how would you describe the greatness of Ronald Reagan, the reason why his efforts are so widely acclaimed in the United States at this present moment?
President Reagan had a great sense, an almost unparalleled sense of what the American nation, the American experience, the American experiment was about, and total dedication to it. He renewed confidence in it. He believed in fundamentally in the American people, which is to say he believed in the common man, in a terrible term. But his belief was without a sense of aristocracies or any of the kinds of overlays that every man. There's a quote I like that was found in his desk after he passed away. He collected quotes and he had lots of them lying around his desk. They've been turned into a book of compiling them. And he had one that was from the great author Thomas Wolfe. This is not Tom Wolfe, who's also a great author, but Thomas Wolfe of the 20s, and who wrote Look Homeward Angel, among other great works. And Thomas Wolfe, this quote was for every man his ability to achieve all that he can. To every man his great shining moment. To every man the promise of all he can be. This is the meaning of America. Well, that's how Ronald Reagan felt and believed, and that inspired the country. But when we talk about the meaning of America, there's too much talk, in a sense, about America, because what we're simply talking about, that's how we talk internally. But what we're simply talking about is the aspirations of all people, and the belief in that, and the ability to work with leaders around the world, but also to with an eye towards what people wanted, what people in the street wanted, their aspirations, their private hopes, and the dignity of humanity. These are the qualities that this vision, which is a universal vision, it's also an American vision. This is what informed every moment of his presidency, and the clarity with which he pursued it, and the skill and humanity with which he pursued that end at a time when the great questions of freedom versus totalitarianism were very much in the balance. These are the qualities that we see and remember in Ronald Reagan. And by the way, that also went to his domestic policies. The championing of lower taxes. What's that about? But freedom. What was all he did about a free and open economy and rule of law? These are the pillars of freedom, and it permeated everything he did. And that's why people remember him.
Thank you. We only have a few minutes left of this seminar. If we leave President Reagan for a moment and look at the politics of today in the United States, could you give us some heads up regarding the presidential race and your prognosis for November?
Well, from the sublime to the ridiculous, but I didn't say that. No, I have, at the moment the polls are close, but we saw, I think everybody in the room knows about the Wisconsin recall election last time. Andreas, you said you did, and I presume everyone else does, last week, where there was an attempt to recall through a ballot process a governor, and it failed. That was the first time in American history that a recall election has failed. There have been several others. Arnold Schwarzenegger was brought to the governorship of California several years ago on the force of a recall election. Very unusual, both to have one and then for it to fail. But in that recall election, one of the notable facts afterwards was that the polling was wrong. The polling showed that it was going to be very close. It was not. Now, we have seen this kind of missing of the polls before. We saw it in 2004 when President Bush was thought by, well, Senator Kerry thought he was going, when he went to bed on election night, thought he had won the election, and he was just waiting for Bush to concede. The next morning when he woke up, his aides told him he had lost. And he had a hard time believing it. In 1980, we saw President Reagan not polling nearly as strongly as the vote ultimately showed. There is something about the Republican vote that pollsters don't capture. Now, I've been asked whether that elsewhere, whether that is because pollsters are biased or some other factor like that. Occasionally, we see that. Exit polls in 2004 also showed Kerry in a stronger position than he ultimately was. When they went back and analyzed those polls, it turned out that the people who'd asked the questions, wherever there were graduate students from universities asking the questions, the vote was way skewed towards Mr. Kerry. Well, universities were a hotbed in that year, and most years for Democratic candidates. So the polling did get skewed. But more often, I don't think that's what normally happens. I think that there is a large part of the Republican vote, whether for technical reasons or because the people don't want to talk to pollsters or don't want to be candid with pollsters, a large part of our vote, particularly in big years where we get big margins, a large part of that vote is invisible to pollsters. I think that's going on this year. And so I suspect this is going to be, the polls showing a tie right now reflects that this is going to be a very big Republican year. What does that mean? We have seen over the last several cycles first an Mr. Obama came in to a large extent on a wave of rejection of Mr. Bush. And I think that the Democrats, he and many around the world, thought it had to do with foreign policy, Iraq and Afghanistan. I don't think it had to do with that at all. I think there was and I'm pretty sure I'm right on this, that it was primarily driven by being upset about Mr. Bush's spending. Our deficits had gone up after we'd had a surplus in the later Clinton years. And then, so there was a rush away from the Republicans, basically punishing the Republicans. Mr. Obama has increased spending vastly more. There's disillusionment with his handling of international affairs, his handling of economic policy, and the spending. So I think that same group that rushed over to Mr. Obama from Mr. Bush between 2004 and 2008, rushed back to the Republicans in 2010, and I think I'm pretty confident now, although you can never be truly confident in politics, as you know, that that vote is going to stay with the Republicans in 2012 and set up an agenda for getting the American government spending under control in a way that it isn't right now. Its deficits under control in a way that they aren't right now.
Thank you so much for that answer. Also, it sounds reassuring that polls may not always be right, because right now the center-right government of Sweden is, lagging behind in the polls. So I hope your analysis goes for the Swedish politics as well.
Good luck to you.
Thank you. And thank you very much for sharing this hour with us, taking the trouble to join us in the Swedish Parliament directly from Washington, D.C. We're most honored to have you with us, and I think we have all learned a lot about President Reagan and American politics. So thank you very much, and applause.
And let me say, it's again, it's a real honor to talk to all of you. I hope we all get to meet at some point face to face, but this is a pretty good approximation of that, and it's great to see all of you.
Thank you, and it also shows that both the United States and Sweden are high-tech countries. Right.
Sweden, I'd say in particular, and we're trying to keep up.
You're too kind. Well, have a very nice day. It's morning in Washington right now, so have a nice day. And thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Okay. Well.